Do you feel like you keep seeing the screen over and over, and you feel like you just can't carry your games any harder as a DPS? Then this is the video for you. Today we're going over 6 things keeping you from climbing as a DPS, and I promise once you master these tips, I can see you hitting ranks like Grandmaster, Celestial, or even Eternity given it enough time. Without further ado, let's hop right into it. Starting out with tip 1 for DPS, and that's not knowing your character role. Now I'm not talking about the other roles, this is a DPS video, but what I'm more so talking about is what your DPS is good at, right? So say I'm Hella, right? I'm Hella, I'm a sniper, kind of a sniper marksman. I do best when I'm not in people's line of sight. So flanking, getting angles is the best thing you want to do with Hella. Or if I'm Bucky, I want to play in the front line because if I get a good pull, I'm pulling him into the team. I'm doing a lot of front damage to the tanks. I'm causing a lot of pressure. You want to be in the front. Same thing as Punisher, you know? And you start to realize as you play the game, some of these characters just fit that line of either front line or taking at angles, or sometimes like flanking, right? So you can play Star-Lord, he's good at the front line, and he's also good at flanking, right? Or Psylocke, really good flanker. BP, Magic, you kind of get what I'm putting down, right? As long as you play the game, the more DPS you know, the more you'll kind of figure out what type of role they are. And what I'm noticing from DPS players who are often having hard times, winning their matches, they're not often playing their role. Like, take it from me. Me personally, I'm a good player on Hella. I didn't used to take that many angles on Hella. That's like if I was a Black Panther player diving the tanks. I'm kind of not doing my job. I'm kind of S-ing out. I'm getting not as much value as I possibly can be. And that's how you want to be looking at the DPS role. How much value can I get playing this character this way, you know? Now moving on to tip number 2, target priority. So we're going to take this from a standpoint of most of the roles. I'll give you a target priority for most of the roles. But basically, what I'm noticing from a lot of DPS players is they oftentimes think they only need to kill the healers, right? Which, don't get me wrong, killing the healers is a good thing, right? But sometimes you need to apply damage to the front line so that you can get to the healers. Oftentimes, DPS game is like kind of focusing on several targets to see which one cracks first, right? If you're a frontline character like the Punisher, oftentimes you're going to look at either breaking the tanks or kind of exposing the tanks, right? And when the tanks feel like there's a lot of pressure on them, they usually start to back up and give more space. And when they give spaces, given up, the healers sometimes don't have anywhere else to go but move to the sides. And when the healers are exposed or feel like they're not safe from the tanks anymore, they try to reposition. And when they get out of position, it's kind of when you want to execute. Now, if you're a Psylocke player, sometimes, or not a Psylocke player, but you know what I mean, like a dive player. If you're a dive player, and sometimes you'll kind of ignore the tanks, no matter what health they're at, which is the bad thing to do. And this goes for all the DPS roles, whether you're a diver or a frontline Punisher. You kind of want to tickle everybody, and you want to see what cracks first, right? Because after a long time tickling, someone's going to make a mistake first. And when they're out of position, then you can look to advance on them. Because if I keep going for healers all the time, the team's going to notice and the healers going to play more up for the tanks. And if I just don't go for the healers, the tanks are never going to die sometimes. It's like a juggling act. You kind of want to apply pressure all over the field through the front line, the back line, the enemy DPS, which cracks first, see who plays out of position first, and then when you feel like you have that right moment, you go in with it. I mean, I could do a whole video on target priority. I could talk about how you can maximize your damage diving with your tank. I could talk about denying off angles, but for this video, just look to get whoever is out of position the most and look to add pressure and look just to fill out the field. Don't just always go for one priority, which is the healers for most DPS. Tip number 3, applying pressure on the backline. Now this tip is going to be for my divers, for my flankers. All y'all know what I'm talking about. This tip is it sounds easy in practice, but a lot more complex than you think it is, right? So let's talk about taking the backline pressure from a Star-Lord's perspective, right? So oftentimes when people dive the backline or go after the backline, they often think, I need to get a pick, I need to get a pick, I need to kill the healer, I need to kill their snipers, something like that, right? You're putting too much pressure on the situation, right? Sometimes you can get behind the backline, hide yourself, like those memes like Magic, hide yourself, wait for the right opportunity, wait for the tanks to push a little bit more forward, maybe wait for one of the support to leave another behind, but you don't want to just dive in because you're applying backline pressure, right? You want to kind of wait for the right opportunity for the support to either be a little bit farther away or I can get to this person, or kind of wait for them to use their resources, because a lot of supports in this game have resources to defend themselves. Not saying you can't kill them with the resources, but you're making your job a little bit harder if they have the resources up. So I'm talking Cloak and Dagger. If you see her still haven't used her little healing field, I don't know what you call it. Anyways, if you haven't seen her use her little AoE heal in a good amount of time, and you just like, hey, wait that out, especially if you're Black Panther, you're going to wait that out because your job is going to be 10 times times harder trying to dive her, right? And if you're a Star Lord, you don't always have to kill her to apply pressure in the backline. You can just gain resources by just being distracting, right? And I love doing this with Star Lord. I love going to the backline because he has this good range, surprisingly for his guns. You can tickle them, shoot them, just pressure them like pew, 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 pew. And you can get them to half health without them healing, and they're gonna have to look for you. And then as soon as you see them turn, or a tank come turn, immediately fly away. Because then you can tell your team, hey, they're looking for me, push. Because they're at a disadvantage. Because usually they're not gonna send one after you, they're gonna send two. And then it becomes an instant 5v4, or not 5v4. You know, it becomes a 5v4 for your team. Because you're one person on the back line, and then 5 in the front. It's a beautiful dream. And then once they realize, oh snap, they're pushing, I gotta turn right around, you go right back around and do the same thing. It's I forgot the exact word for it, but it's basically creating, I think, a crossfire. I think that's correct, a crossfire, where the enemy team is forced to make a decision. And especially in solo queue, if you're not queuing up with anyone else, oftentimes the team is not going to make the right decision. And I always recommend using cover when you're flanking, and play near a health pack. Make your job easier, because you're most likely not going to get heals unless you have a Luna Snow. Now at tip number 4, we have playing too many DPS heroes with different kits, right? Now there's a lot of DPS heroes in this game. Often if you're climbing, use DPS heroes that you often know are meta. But then again, also among the meta cast, there seem to be little disparities in the characters, right? Now I see a lot of DPS heroes climbing, struggling, and their character pool will be something like Bucky, Wolverine, Storm, right? We got 3 different variations of characters, right? We got a frontline pressure character who's projectile, we got a Wolverine flanking character who's melee, and then we got a flying projectile hero, right? Like maybe you can argue the Bucky and the Storm kind of play a similar role, but still the kits are very different and their goals are often different too, right? Storm could be anywhere from the front line to just playing with the tanks to just looking to help the back line against countering the dive, right? And the same thing with the Wolverine. He's most likely flanking. He's kind of playing a different role from the other 2 characters prior. The reason I say this is because if you focus on like one type of kit, right? Say if you're a diving person, right? You play Magic, you play Black Panther, you play Psylocke, your goal every game is kind of similar. And not only is it kind of similar, you're kind of practicing the same things over and over and over on each map. It's just building up that skill tree in that skill, right? If we're constantly switching depending on how we feel, depending on if we like this character more than this character, oftentimes we're going to see kind of diminishing results or just like slow progression, right? Which slow progression is not bad, but if you want to do this at the fastest pace possible and just overall stack the benefits in your favor, I recommend, say, like if you're going to play someone who likes to be in the front line where you don't have to worry too much about taking an angle and getting in the back line, you know, Punisher, Bucky, very solid for frontline pressure, especially with all of those random rocket players. If you're looking to take angles and get on the side, I recommend someone like Hela, really good. If you're someone who wants to be in the backline, you know, we got Magic, who's really good in the meta right now. We have Psylocke, BP, kind of in the hard spot, but you kind of catch my drift. Now, I do think if you are going to have like one character outside your normal, you know, skill tree, I think that's fine, but I wouldn't recommend like, you know, having like 3 different type of play styles in your DPS pool. It will just stunt your growth in the long run. Tip number 5, survivability. Now, this comes down to positioning, and a lot of DPS are just getting this wrong, even in the highest ranks, and it's kind of irking me. And I'm kind of a person who loves to stay alive because I provide the most value, but it's also been my detriment too, also learning how to play with randoms, right? So this may, if you're queuing with a support, it might be a little bit different, but if you're playing with randoms, like the most of us are, you got a position not where you get the best value all the time, but where you have the most consistent impact, right? And what I mean by this is if you're a character who's constantly flanking and not playing near health packs, you're gonna have a tough time, especially if Luna Snow doesn't have a tag on you and you don't have the support resources. That means you got to position near the LOS, line of sight, of your healers most of the time, right? I see a lot of DPS tanks understand why they're like not dying. Like I'll see a tank be on the point, going around the payload, and the healers just can't heal him because the payload's covering him. And I say this obviously because it's a DPS guide, but the DPS do the same thing, right? They'll take an angle where they're like, I need heals, and they're not realizing where their healers are positioned, understanding the healer's on the high ground, so he can't see if he's directly under you, or if the healer's right around the corner, obviously he doesn't have LOS of you. Now, this is very tricky. That's why Bucky is such a good character and has a high win rate in this game, because he can do it all in the front line, and he's always in LOS of the healers. Honestly, one of my favorite characters for survivability. Not to mention that every ability he does gives him shields. So not only that, but also playing for cover. Like I said, time and time again, taking an angle, taking a flank, play near cover and play near a health pack. This map and game kind of seems like every angle you want to tank, there's a health pack for it, which is really cool because they make it so you don't have to completely rely on your healers. But a lot of players are just not noticing that. Last but not least, tip number 6, just using your ultimates wrong. Oftentimes, DPS players just love to throw their ult out because they think it's a lot of free kills, and sometimes depending on your elo, it might be free kills. But the higher you climb, the less and less value you're going to get for your ultimate because you're just using it in the wrong positions. Now, I'm not saying wait for the entire team to get back. What I'm saying is, if you're going to be someone who's going to use your ultimate, wait to see if they have anything to counter it, right? Say, kind of watch ult tracking and watching the support ults. Oh, do they have Luna up? Do they have this up? Okay, I'm going to wait till they use it, and then I'm going to look to ult to get my most value. This is highly important for someone like Star-Lord, who can build his ultimate super fast and get a lot of value out of it. But oftentimes, even in Eternity lobbies, I see Star-Lords not ult tracking and just burning it and not getting any value. Now, there is a strategy where you can burn their ultimate supports, but that's something you communicate. So you can have your teammates save their ultimates instead, and you can just burn the support ultimates, right? But not just that and waiting for support ults, but also things like Punisher. Punisher players oftentimes, not Punisher players, because I think Punisher players know this, but people who play Punisher just to fill a role or to like kind of counter a comp, they often think, oh, I'm just going to pop ultimate and I'm going to kill the entire team. And they often fall over. Usually what I like to do, especially Punisher in the past few days, I've realized, wow, his ultimate is really good, but I only know why it's really good because I'm telling my supports and I'm commenting to my team, hey guys, I'm going to need you guys to carry me right. As they come in, I'm going to use my ultimate, and they usually use a Mantis ultimate with me to give me speed boost. They usually give me shield, a tank stands in front of me. You know, they give me the whole 9. Usually, some elos won't do that because, you know, obviously the case. But even if the teams are not doing that, you can often play surprise with the Punisher ult, like getting a flank angle and then hiding from the team. And if you die with the Punisher, you can at least take 2 or 3 with you, or take at least the crucial picks, you know, like taking the healers out, or at least gunning down a tank so the team's easier to walk over. But the lack of people thinking when they're using their ultimate costs them massive games. And I tell you, just for the future of you climbing this game, or potentially taking it professionally, that ultimates are going to be the bread and butter deciding the matches. Some people may be very skilled equally, but the team that uses their ultimate better oftentimes wins. But that's going to do it for me. I hope you guys enjoy the video. I hope you guys gain something from it. I'm a solo queue DPS player, and until like almost 3 weeks ago, honestly thought climbing solo queue as DPS was damn near impossible. But now I'm almost like 200 Eternity, 2 more weeks left in the season. I'm trying to get that top 500. I know there's other DPS players who are top 500, working on mechanics. But one thing I am taking to certain are these tips that helped me along the way. Because constantly taking these into a factor and applying them to every match I played are making some wins easier than other and some unwinnable games even easier. But a little secret tip for you guys to say to the end of the video, calm everything. I'm telling you right now, DPS role becomes so much better if I can say I'm taking this angle. Luna want to see me a snow flag. So I don't even know what the name of that ability is, but you know, you know what I'm talking about. If I'm going for a Star-Lord ult, my Magneto wants to bubble me. If I'm going for a Namor ult, the group wants to combo. Like, just calming anything in this game as a DPS will make your efforts and your kills so much better. But yeah, with that all being said and done, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. And good luck on the rank climb.